Get out of this house by the end of the month. Rather than saying I'm home, my husband came back in the early morning with a cheerful smile and these words. As I stood there stunned with my mouth open at this sudden announcement, he continued speaking. My girlfriend is pregnant with a boy. You've only given birth to girls, and all you do is complain about housework and caregiving. You're in the way, so get out. My husband casually revealed his affair and went even further by completely dismissing who I am. After getting married, I gave birth to twin girls in my first pregnancy. What awaited me after somehow getting through those dizzying days was living with my in-laws. Since raising even one child is difficult, let alone twins, my in-laws said they wanted to help and suggested we live together. But in reality, my hardships only doubled. My mother-in-law didn't help with taking care of the girls at all. She dumped all the family responsibilities on me. Having gained free time, my mother-in-law would just sit in front of the TV all day, only opening her mouth to criticize. On top of that, my husband's bedridden grandfather also lived in the house. They said they would hire a caregiver, but in the end, they said it was too expensive and pushed that responsibility onto me as well. No matter how hard I tried, I was never valued and only treated as someone to handle housework and caregiving. Still, I endured it because they were kind to my daughters as a father and grandparents. When I glared at my husband in anger, he returned a shallow smile. Oh, right. The girls are in the way too, so take them with you. You didn't need to tell me that. I had no intention of leaving my daughters in a place like this. I slowly opened my mouth and smiled at my husband. Agnes, Sage, Eddie. Breakfast is ready, get up. 7 a.m. This is how our family of 4 starts each day. My name is Naomi. Before marrying Eddie, I was completely devoted to my work, so much so that my colleagues said I was a workaholic who lived for my job. However, facing the reality of turning 30 soon, I felt pressured. So, thanks to a close colleague's arrangement, they hosted a party with 4 men and 4 women, including me and my colleague. While everyone else was engaged in lively conversation, I had very little to talk about since I had been so focused on work. I became completely isolated, and even those who had tried to include me at first quickly turned their attention to other women. At this point, I deeply regretted having devoted myself solely to work without seeing reality. During the party, I went to the bathroom for a break. With my colleague, I confided my worries about the situation. Why is it so difficult? Just getting to the stage before romance develops. Well, it's natural things aren't going smoothly since you've been focused only on work. You're still like a beginner when it comes to romance. I know you're trying to comfort me, but that's not comforting at all. I finally understand. It's embarrassing to be a novice at romance at this age because I've only focused on work. But I can't help it, I just don't know how. At work, I was known for being helpful and taking good care of my team members, but when it came to romance, I was completely lost. I couldn't understand myself and couldn't see the best way forward. Since I performed perfectly at work, I thought I could handle romance just as efficiently. However, seeing the results early in the party, I was beginning to feel defeated. You try too hard to handle everything efficiently. You should relax a bit and just be yourself, even if you don't know what you're doing. Though I didn't fully understand my colleague's advice, I decided to try interacting with the men again without hiding that I was inexperienced in romance. When my colleague told one of the men that I had been pretending to be experienced in romance, the conversation started flowing better than before. While I managed some conversation with the other men, I enjoyed talking with the man my colleague introduced me to the most, and he was the only one I exchanged contact information with after the party. That man was my husband, Eddie. After dating for a year, Eddie and I got married. Another year later, twins Agnes and Sage were born, and we became a family of 4. I wanted to continue working, but I wasn't skilled enough to balance unfamiliar child rearing with work, so I had no choice but to resign. There was another reason I had to quit my job. We were asked to live with Eddie's parents at their house. My grandfather is basically bedridden at my parents' house, and my parents are reaching their limit with caregiving. I want you to help with that too, Naomi. Please, they're important family. But that's so sudden. I'm already struggling with raising twins. Mom will be there, so it'll be fine. It won't be difficult. Please. You know I rarely ask for anything, right? So please think of this as one of my few requests. Indeed, since we started dating, I had rarely seen him ask for anything selfish from me or others. He would either solve everything himself or only rely on others when absolutely necessary. His personality of trying to handle everything alone was very similar to how I was when I was working, which was one of the things that made me feel connected to him. Seeing his desperate expression, I thought there must be something serious going on for Eddie to plead so earnestly. Giving in to his desperate request, I agreed to live with his parents and grandfather at their house. However, from then on, my days became a whirlwind. My day starts by waking up the girls to match Eddie's early work schedule and feeding them breakfast. Agnes and Sage. The twin girls are similar in many ways, even how they sleep, but Agnes is surprisingly better at waking up. She wakes up easily to my voice with an adult-like morning disposition and helps wake up Sage, who sleeps next to her. Thanks to this, I don't have to wake up Sage myself, and I can feed them breakfast together. Despite having worked early mornings for a long time, Eddie is terrible at waking up. Even when Agnes tries to wake him, he briefly opens his eyes but then tries to pull her into bed to sleep together, so I end up having to wake him up. This happens every day. I make him set an alarm the night before, but somehow the alarm never rings at the set time, and I'm sure Eddie turns it off when he wakes up in the middle of the night. I even tried setting an alarm on my phone with a passcode, but he would just put pillows or blankets over the phone to block the sound, making it pointless. I don't know what to do about little Agnes being so good at waking up like an adult, while adult Eddie can't wake up like a child. I'm sure this is all because of his parents who live with us. You see, Eddie has 2 older sisters, and as the youngest of 3 siblings, he was spoiled by his parents growing up. While his parents pampered him, Eddie also entrusted most of his life choices to them. From my perspective, Eddie was like a puppet controlled by his parents. I had no intention of becoming their puppet. Though I thought this way, I later realized that agreeing to live with his parents at Eddie's request was my first mistake. One day, after sending Eddie to work and the girls to kindergarten, I returned home. While I was trying to clean up the dishes, an alarm went off from the grandfather's room. This alarm could mean various requests, changing diapers, meals, helping him turn over, but whatever the timing, I needed to respond immediately. If I couldn't step away and made him wait even a little, the pressure from his parents was intense. Naomi, why are you ignoring Father's alarm? How dare you neglect Father who can barely move? I'm sorry, but I really couldn't step away at that moment. No excuses. You'll only be recognized as Eddie's wife when you can handle all the housework, childcare, and caregiving. Don't forget that. When I first came here, I naively thought I would only need to take care of the girls and handle minimal housework, but in reality, I ended up doing everything in the house, and now I'm completely exhausted both mentally and physically. Not only is my mother-in-law harsh, but my father-in-law is too. As I interacted with him, I realized that my father-in-law held old-fashioned views and liked to impose them on others. He wasn't happy that I gave birth to girls instead of boys. If I try to talk to my father-in-law, he either ignores me or dismisses my opinions, and he has never once shown approval towards me. Even though I should be a family member since marrying Eddie, I'm treated like an unwanted presence here. Hey, Eddie, could you help a little with the housework and taking care of the girls on your days off? Why should I? You've always handled all the housework. I work outside and earn money. You do the housework and childcare to take care of the home. That's how it should be, right? Due to his parents' influence, Eddie firmly believes that women should handle all household matters, and he never helps at all. Of course, it's impossible for one person to handle everything, and if I fall behind even a little with housework, his parents harass me, look down on me, and order me to redo things. Though caught between his parents and Eddie, I desperately held on to protect Agnes and Sage. By the way, Naomi, do you have any plans to have more children? Children? Well, with Agnes and Sage here, maybe we could think about it after they're a bit more settled. What are you saying? All your children are girls. Our family heir must be a boy. Eddie, you're not thinking of making one of your daughters the heir, are you? Of course not. I've thought it through. I want a son right away too, and I'll talk with Naomi about having children properly. Wait, why are you deciding this on your own? I'm not. That's good then. We're counting on you. Do your best. You too, Naomi. Make sure you can give birth to a fine boy. I was completely appalled that they would have such vulgar conversations even at the dinner table with children present. I tried to reduce my mental stress by thinking of them as strangers who just happened to speak the same language, but Eddie didn't consider my feelings at all and kept trying to seduce me every night to meet his parents' expectations. However, I absolutely refused his advances. My feelings for Eddie had already cooled, and I was exhausted both mentally and physically from having all the household responsibilities pushed onto me. Above all, resting my body was my top priority and my small act of resistance against my unreasonable in-laws. Come on, think a little about my parents and your position. How dare he say such things? Is this how you talk to your exhausted wife? I completely lost understanding of Eddie. Where did things go wrong? What went wrong? I don't even have the desire to know anymore. However, quitting my job was a setback. No matter how I managed the household budget, I couldn't save enough money to run away with my daughters. Moreover, even if I wanted to find a new job, issues like finding daycare for the girls and grandfather's care made it impossible to escape. Besides, although Eddie was the worst husband, he was still the only father my daughters had. Prioritizing my daughters, I decided to become like a robot that mechanically handled housework and grandfather's care. Then one day, Eddie sent me a message saying he would stay overnight at work, but when he returned the next day, he energetically threw off his suit jacket and proudly announced in front of me and his parents with a huge smile. I've taken a mistress, and she's currently pregnant. What? Had he been drinking, or had he finally lost his mind? While I was struggling with housework, childcare, caregiving, and pressure from his parents, what was he saying? From now on, she'll be living with us in this house. Seeing Eddie's beaming smile and serious gaze as he looked at us, I realized this wasn't a joke. He was seriously saying such an absurd thing. We haven't even been married for 5 years. The girls are still young and need attention, yet he went out pretending to work and found another woman. And she's already pregnant. This is just too awful. While I was stunned with my mouth hanging open, I watched to see how his parents would react, but surprisingly, they didn't seem shocked. Instead, they stood up with bright smiles too. "She's pregnant. If you're coming to tell us this, could it be? Is it a boy? Is it a boy? We went for the checkup today, and it's a boy. Just like we discussed, a boy is being born." Apparently, he had already told his parents about potentially having a child with his mistress. It's crazy that they would approve of an affair just to have a boy. They continued their discussion as if I didn't exist, and it was decided that his mistress would live in this house. Well done. That's my son. To think you managed to get her pregnant with a boy. You've really done us proud. Now the family heir issue is solved. I knew you could do it. It's thanks to you both supporting me. Because of that, she felt secure enough to agree to live here with us. Watching their insane behavior, what little feeling I had left for my husband completely disappeared. While they celebrated, I returned to my room and started packing just the essentials, desperate to leave this house as soon as possible. "Mama, what's wrong? Are we going somewhere?" Agnes, Sage. "Yes, we're going out. We're not going to live in this house anymore, let's live just the three of us." I had Agnes and Sage pack their things too, though they didn't understand the situation. When I returned to the living room, they were still celebrating, completely ignoring my existence. As I tried to pass through the living room carrying luggage with Agnes and Sage, they finally seemed to notice my presence. "Where do you think you're going with all that luggage? In what position was this man who had an affair with a stranger and got her pregnant asking us such a question? Anywhere but this incomprehensible place would be fine." I had Agnes and Sage wait at the entrance. From the packed state of our carry-on suitcase, large backpack, and the children's cute little backpacks, even the insensitive Eddie seemed to realize what I was trying to do. "Well, you're quick to catch on. Saves me the trouble of bringing it up. In that case, this is probably what we need most right now." Saying this, he handed me divorce papers from the living room drawer with only his section already filled out. The preparation was almost too perfect. I wonder if he had prepared this even before marrying me. It's terrifying to think about. But indeed, having Eddie's section already properly filled out is convenient for me now. I'd be troubled if he tried to cancel the divorce later, and more than anything, I won't have to see this family's faces anymore. If there's anything I'm slightly concerned about, it would be the bedridden grandfather I've been caring for. He's generally indifferent to everything, and though he can probably hear this conversation, he's not saying anything. Seems like even this situation isn't worth his involvement. I took the completed divorce papers and left the in-laws' house with my daughters, leaving no regrets behind. If this was going to happen, I should never have gotten married. I'm even angry at my past self for attending that party. Unable to contain my anger, I caught a passing taxi and went to the city office, where I filled out the remaining sections in the waiting area. Though I knew it wasn't good to take out my anger on things or people, I couldn't control my anger and practically slammed the divorce papers down at the office window. And so, my divorce from Eddie was finalized, and I became a single mother of two. Though I left my in-laws' house and submitted the divorce papers in the heat of the moment, I have no regrets. However, finding a new home immediately isn't easy. In fact, there probably aren't many real estate agents who would rent to us in this situation. After thinking it through thoroughly, I decided to rely on my parents' home for the first time in 10 years. I hadn't been on good terms with my parents. We had become estranged after fighting about which university I should attend and which company I should work for. Moreover, my parents had been quite opposed to my marriage to Eddie. After leaving home almost like running away when they told me to reconsider, all contact had been limited to phone calls and emails. Every time I was treated poorly at my in-laws, the thought of returning home crossed my mind. However, I didn't want to admit that I lacked the ability to see Eddie's true nature and that my parents had been right. In the end, I was just using childcare and caregiving as excuses to avoid the awkwardness of facing my parents. In my current situation, I can't prioritize such pride. When I contacted them, my mother immediately told me to come back, and my father came to pick us up. Though I was prepared for harsh words, my parents were completely absorbed with Agnes and Sage, whom they hadn't seen in a long time. I'm so sorry for everything. You were right about everything, Dad and Mom. I bowed deeply in apology and explained everything that had happened. At first, my father frowned when looking at me, but he quickly directed his anger toward Eddie and his family. What? That's absolutely unforgivable. Such unreasonable behavior based on their selfish circumstances, I absolutely won't allow it. Using a child's gender as an excuse for an affair, and the parents even approved? They must be crazy. They spoke in unison, looking at me directly and clearly stating that I never needed to go back to that house. They said I could live here, find work, and raise Agnes and Sage. They promised to support me with all their might. I hadn't contacted them since starting work, then suddenly got in touch to tell them I was married with children, and now I've suddenly returned home divorced. Though I've been such an undutiful daughter, they didn't dismiss me but listened carefully to my story and got angry on my behalf. This reminded me once again of the importance of family. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry for everything, and thank you for helping me. When I finally calmed down, I realized I was hungry. Noticing this, my mother prepared soup for us. It was the standard pumpkin soup from my childhood home, and its familiar taste gave me a sense of security and gentle warmth. After that, knowing I couldn't rely on my parents forever, I started looking for work. Although I had been working intensely just 5 years ago, the reality was that my time as a full-time housewife created a significant gap in my employment history. However, I didn't give up and kept going to interviews persistently until I finally landed a job with a housekeeping service company. Though it was different from my previous work, I took the interview thinking I could use the skills I'd gained from housework and child rearing. It's a small company, but the president and other employees are cheerful and kind. Although Agnes and Sage will have to miss kindergarten for a while, which makes them feel lonely, they somehow seem to sense something as children do and spend time happily with my parents at home without complaining. As we were managing to live like this, 3 months passed. Then one day, Eddie suddenly came to see me. When I opened the door thinking it was a delivery, there stood Eddie, looking terribly worn down with his head lowered. With his face devoid of energy, he grabbed me forcefully as soon as he saw me and repeatedly begged for reconciliation. Please, Naomi. I was wrong. Won't you start over with me again? You're all I have now. Please, Naomi. His voice grew louder with each word, tears welling up in his eyes until large drops started falling. What's this about? Coming here and pushing yourself on me like this? It's over between us. Don't show up here anymore. I had nothing to say to my divorced husband and tried to turn him away at the door, but Eddie started wailing like a child. This could become a neighborhood nuisance if he keeps crying. However, Agnes and Sage are inside playing with my mother. I absolutely refuse to let this man destroy our happy home again now that we've finally settled into a comfortable life. I pulled Eddie's arm and moved us to a nearby coffee shop. I thought we could have a calm conversation if we drank coffee served by the elderly owner while soft jazz played in the background. After calming down with some coffee, Eddie answered my question about why he had come to see me in a matter-of-fact tone. The truth is, we as a family need you. Apparently, he hadn't told his mistress anything about his family or his grandfather's care. On top of that, he told her that since they were getting married, she should quit her job and handle all the housework, childcare, and grandfather's care after having the baby. However, since she hadn't been told anything beforehand, there was no way she would easily agree to this. As expected, she became furious and left. With no one left to handle the housework and care, the burden fell on his mother to handle everything, but she ended up getting sick. With his mother, their last resort for handling household matters, falling ill, there was nothing they could do. Since Eddie himself had always left everything to others, they had no choice but to use care services, but housework still remained. It seems they couldn't afford to pay for more services, and their house had become like a garbage dump with everything left untouched. Arguments frequently broke out between his parents and Eddie about who was responsible for this situation. Sometimes these would even escalate into physical fights. However, they recently realized they couldn't afford to fight among themselves, and although it was a short period, they thought the best solution would be to reconcile with me since I had handled everything in the house. Well, of course, hearing such a story wouldn't make me get back together with him or return to that house to help with housework and care. I don't want to live with people who only think about themselves anymore. Please. Come back to me. If you come back now, I'll give you that house. My parents are getting old too. Who knows when they'll become unable to move and have to go into a facility. So what? What are you trying to say? So when the house rights transfer to me, I'll give them to you. Then you can do whatever you want with the house. How about that? It's not a bad deal, right? So please. Come back. Eddie bowed deeply, offering the house rights as a condition. I sighed, remembering what my mother had told me just the other day. Listen, Eddie will probably try to get back together with you. But don't agree no matter what he says. Whether he appeals to emotion or tries to use money, people don't change that quickly. Things might be good at first, but once you go back to him, he'll return to his old self. I hadn't expected Eddie to have any feelings left for me after praising his mistress so much, but to think he would try to use money. True, that house is quite impressive among the neighborhood houses, having been built long ago and renovated multiple times. The old me might have been tempted by the prospect of eventually getting that house. But according to Eddie, the transfer would only happen after his parents become unable to move. Moreover, there's no guarantee such a promise would be kept. I'd probably just be treated like a slave again regardless of what he says. The fact that he's presenting this as a benefit to me shows that Eddie still sees me as nothing more than a housework robot. This is ridiculous, there's no way I would agree to such a proposal. I don't want any slave contract marriage like that, and I don't want a house stained with such unpleasant memories. I won't cancel the divorce. All I want from you is compensation and child support. Don't come near us anymore. Why did he think he could hold me back with such a proposal? His shallow thinking is beyond frustrating, it's almost pitiful. But feeling pity doesn't mean I'll extend a helping hand. Rather than reaching out to Eddie, I'll focus on giving even more love to Agnes and Sage. Nothing I say will get through to him anymore, it's just a waste of time. After declaring this, I finished my coffee, paid only for my portion, and left the shop. After that, true to my word, I demanded compensation from both Eddie and his mistress. His mistress tried to escape by claiming she didn't know Eddie was married, but when Eddie himself provided evidence that she had known, she couldn't deny it anymore. I know Eddie doesn't have much money because he's using care services, but so what? If "I don't have money so I can't pay" became an acceptable excuse, it would mean whoever does wrong wins. I steadily proceeded with the legal procedures, following my lawyer's advice. About a year passed, and one day, Eddie appeared before me again. I had thought I never wanted to see his face again and had been handling all negotiations through my lawyer. Meeting Eddie for the first time in a year, he wasn't just worn down, his appearance was completely disheveled, and he didn't look like someone living a normal life. He looked even more miserable than the homeless people in the park. "Please. I'm begging you. Help me." With tears in his eyes, he rubbed his face against my clothes, pleading. Without me even asking, he started rambling about his personal circumstances. I wanted to leave, but Eddie's grip on my clothes was too strong to break free, and I was forced to listen to his story. Perhaps trying to evoke sympathy, his story was unnecessarily long. To summarize, he was unable to keep up with paying compensation and child support to both me and his mistress. Not only had his mistress left, but she was also demanding compensation for breaking their engagement and child support for their son. So what? It's your own fault. Instead of wasting time telling sad stories, work properly and pay the child support. Perhaps because he had been talking loudly, other people could hear his story. Noticing the whispers around us, Eddie's grip loosened. I took that opportunity to shake off his arm and turn my back. It's completely his own doing, and I don't care at all about him being asked for compensation and child support by his mistress. Of course, I have no intention of helping, and he can deal with that problem himself. You're really all I have left. My parents won't help anymore, and the pressure from her is so strong that I'm honestly at my wit's end. I don't know what to do anymore, please. Listen, seriously, enough already. I told you a year ago, didn't I? Don't come near us anymore. I don't want to see your face or hear your voice. Handle your own problems yourself. Don't say that. We once vowed to help each other and live together. Were those feelings a lie? Again, Eddie selfishly talks only about his own feelings. His self-centeredness made my anger rise. Who trampled on those feelings? Who didn't help me? I've had enough. Really, how many times are you going to disrupt our lives with your self-centeredness before you're satisfied? I'm at my limit. If this continues, I'll call the police. The police. The word police seemed to have an effect, as Eddie hunched his shoulders and started sniffling loudly on purpose. However, seeing a passerby taking photos of him with their smartphone, Eddie gave up and left. I decided to report this incident to my lawyer just in case. According to my lawyer, if he ignores the warning and approaches again, threatening to call the police should drive him away. I felt reassured having such a strong ally. Some time passed after that, and Agnes and Sage were able to return to kindergarten, so I no longer needed my parents to look after them. Although my parents were a bit disappointed about having less time with their grandchildren, Agnes and Sage are happy to be able to play with their friends again. I continue working at the housekeeping service company, but I'm completely used to it now and even have regular customers who specifically request me. I feel that I'm growing alongside my children's growth, and I'm enjoying fulfilling days, both at work and in my private life. Meanwhile, according to what I heard from my lawyer, Eddie and his parents finally ran out of money even for care services and, struggling financially, had to sell their house. Although the old house didn't bring in as much money as they thought, they placed his grandfather in a facility, and now Eddie and his parents live together in a small apartment. However, they still don't have enough money at all, and even his father was forced to work. His father, stressed from working for the first time in a long time and being instructed by people younger than him, completely lost it and started drinking more frequently than ever. Since his mother is ill and can't work, they're living a hard life. Of course, I have no intention of being lenient about the compensation and child support payments just because they don't have money. Since the procedures are already complete, I'm making sure they pay even if it has to be in installments. If I don't do this, I won't be able to allocate money for Agnes and Sage, who will need more expenses in the future. Besides, if I wait for payment now, they'll probably get carried away thinking they can make me wait again. That's why both my parents and my lawyer told me that showing no kindness is the best strategy. Even if people say it's cruel, after what they did to me, this much is only natural. As for Eddie's former mistress, I heard she's receiving compensation and child support just like me while working part-time and properly raising her child as a single mother. Although she's the kind of woman who would have an affair, at least she's raising her child properly. I can only pray that Eddie will learn to think about others besides himself. Though of course, reconciliation is absolutely out of the question. Agnes, Sage. You'll be late for kindergarten. Hurry up. Let's do our best another day. For Agnes and Sage, to protect these two smiles.